I just want to take a moment to welcome our next and first speaker for the day. Her story is powerful, but not as powerful as she is, Jade Nelson. You got this.
Okay. Hey, everyone. All right. I had no idea how to start the introduction other than this has been a fantastic weekend and it's been wonderful meeting you all. I hope you're as excited to hear my story as I am to tell it. Behind every statistic is a face and a person. And these are some of the amazing people defying the odds and beating epilepsy. Epilepsy is a disorder it's caused by malfunctioning nerve cells in the brain, which cause episodes called seizures. 1 in 26 people in the US have epilepsy. And currently, there are 50,000 Americans diagnosed each year. And right here in America, we pay $15.5 billion caring and treating epilepsy each year. And currently, there are 65 million people worldwide living with epilepsy. More people live with epilepsy than autism, MS, Parkinson's, and cerebral palsy combined. Raise your hand if you know someone with epilepsy. Wow. Wow. If there was anybody that raised their hand, my hope is after today, my story will allow you to have a better understanding of the journey a person with epilepsy goes through. So bear with me, okay? It was July 4th, 1987, and this little girl laid on her father's lap in the back seat of her family's blue Oldsmobile as her mother sped them to the hospital. She felt herself slipping into darkness, and she could hear a loud rumble in the distance, like a train. Unable to respond, but able to hear her father say, "Jade, stay with me. Jade, we're here." If you haven't guessed yet, that little girl is me. And that moment was my first seizure. Even with the amazing support of my family, I felt so alone during those seizures and powerless. And I would carry that feeling for much of my life. The feeling that nobody truly understood, the feeling of powerlessness each time a seizure happened, and how alone I felt in the world. Thankfully, I don't carry those feelings today. I have lived with epilepsy for nearly 31 years. But because of keto and my healing journey in the kitchen, I have been able to mitigate those feelings. But before all that, there was 28 years of struggle. According to BJ Neblett, we are the sum total of our experience. And if that statement is true, I am the front car of a roller coaster with a life full of ups and downs. And here are just a few. I've had 3 ICU stays. Yes, that is the intensive care unit. 12 EEGs that I can actually remember. And 17 MRIs, all before the age of 18. And 10 medications in the first 28 years of my diagnosis. Multiple ER visits and hospital stays that made me feel like the hospital was my second home. And 30 complex partial seizures, and those are the ones I could actually remember. And way too many simple partials to count, because to me, those were like breathing and walking. They just happened and you kept moving through life. And 1 brain biopsy at the age of 8 that determined I had a scar on my left temporal lobe It was caused from birth when the umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck. And during each contraction, the blood supply was cut off, in essence, causing a mini stroke. And that little girl right there had no idea what was ahead of her. And from that point on, all I wanted to be was normal. So here I was, diagnosed with epilepsy, and all I wanted to do was be a normal kid, which I was. I did sports, I had friends, I traveled, and I had epilepsy that affected my life. When I look back now, 2 stories stand out that ground me into the person I am today, and I want to share them with you. Recently, my mom told me a story. She said, "I remember one day when you were playing outside, not long after you were diagnosed." And I said, "Be careful." That's what she said to me. And I turned to her and I said, "I just want to be normal, Mom." And she said it broke her heart. And from that point on, she had to trust that everything would be okay and allow me to live my life. And that if something did happen, I was doing what I loved. I am so lucky to have a family that never held me back and believed I was just as capable as everyone else. And I was beyond lucky to have a mom that was a nurse. And she made sure I was well educated on my diagnosis and my medications. That my epilepsy wasn't something to ignore, but to understand. And her gift of self-empowerment through knowledge continues to be the cornerstone of how I live today. But the thing is, parents can't always protect their children. Things happen. And as a child, I faced discrimination due to my diagnosis. And it helped fuel my fire to educate people. And that's what brought me here. When I was in 8th grade, my English class was planning a trip to San Francisco, and we were going to see the Christmas Carol. And I had planned my outfit 2 months in advance, and I can actually remember what I was wearing to this day. We were going on a trip, but a week or 2 before, I had a seizure at school. And when I returned, my teacher informed me that I would not be attending the field trip because they felt for my safety. She even said she was scared and she didn't think she could take care of me. And I remember how upset I was, and I felt so excluded out of something my heart was so set on. And that old saying, "I just want to be normal," rang in my ears. I became very mad, and I couldn't understand why I was being punished for something I literally had no control over. That night, I cried and cried to my mom about how unfair it was. And my mother and father had an appointment with the principal and the teacher, and they decided that my father would come along on that trip. And I was so embarrassed. But the thing is I never saw my dad on that trip. When we were in the theater, I think he sat out in the lobby, and when we went to Pier 39, he wandered around somewhere. I couldn't see him, but I swear I felt him watching me the whole time. My parents, fought for me in that office, and they were my voice when I wasn't being given a chance to be heard. But as we all know, struggles don't just magically disappear when we reach adulthood. They just simply change. And as I entered adulthood, on 2 separate occasions, I was unable to drive, and I felt like a burden to my family, my husband. I had a seizure home alone and was nearly arrested because they thought I was a drug addict. I don't think it helped that I was wandering around in a mini skirt and my bra, and you can laugh at that, it's okay. My husband, after being together for 3 years, saw me have a seizure for the first time, and I was in my head thinking, there's no denying this now. It's right here with us. I became a master at dealing with insurance companies. One of the most emotional things I've done, but it's what set me on a path to finding empowerment. And then I had a seizure during swim practice that sent me on another round of medications. And I had unsurmountable medical bills that never ended. Now, the stress of life, compounded with simply being an adult, it made life beyond hard. It's because of all these events that I sit here before you, sharing that it is my hope that any child or adult diagnosed wouldn't have to undergo the amount of trauma I have experienced. It is my belief that diet changed my physical, mental, and emotional well-being and can do the same for others. Well, that was turned around backwards, right? Today's topic isn't about the sum of Jade's miserable moments. Rather, it's about how I began my healing journey in the kitchen. Changes start with a moment, one instance. Mine began with one phone call from my little sister in the fall of 2015. During another medication transition that was not going well at all. And she was listening to yet another long crying jag from me. And then when I got quiet, she said, "You need to look into the ketogenic diet." And this is where my plot twist happens. My dream of being off medication and the opportunity to finally see what living normal truly meant, that it might be possible, it began with me making a phone call to my doctor and making an appointment. I went to the neurologist and I told him I wanted to be on the ketogenic diet. I requested to be taken off zonisamide, and I stayed only on Garbitrol and Vimpat. And he sent me away with a titration schedule, a link to the Charlie Foundation, and told me, don't eat more than 50 grams of carbohydrates and as much protein as you want. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful, and I was ready to heal myself. With my very tiny amount of information, I set out on my own, but I had no idea what I was about to begin, and that what he had given me really wasn't enough. It was going to take so much more. I was going to have to make drastic changes to my diet and life. And I wondered if I was ready. You know, I had always been trying new things, working on trying to feel better. I had a really solid self-care plan. I had been practicing the paleo diet, but I hadn't eaten dairy in 7 years. I hadn't had beef in nearly 20, and I seriously thought bacon was disgusting. That is not the truth today, though. I'm obsessed with it, and I hope you all are too. I was severely underweight when I started out. It was due to that latest medication change, and it also caused a really bad stomach gastritis, so eating was really hard. But I was willing to do anything at that point, even if it meant changing everything I did. Food, like never before, became the most important thing in my life. Food and how it was helping me became this constant shifting puzzle. And I was constantly trying to figure it out and solve it. It was a target that was constantly moving. And no longer was food just this thing that tasted good and made me feel emotionally happy when I was sad due to my seizures or any of the struggles with it. It was becoming my guide through the feelings I had carried about my diagnosis, the overwhelming frustration, the lack of control, the never-ending anger, and that desire for normal. and ultimately towards a form of acceptance. All strong feelings that led to a healing and to an understanding that food was about to be my medicine. Frustrating, a feeling I battled every day, and a desire to have control over my body that betrayed me whenever it wanted. Gaining back control began with research and education. It was the one thing that made me feel in control. All my life, I was obsessed with educating myself and researching. So I did what I knew how to do best. I started educating myself on keto, stuffing my brain full of information. And that knowledge empowered me. I read every book, research paper, and study I could get a hold of. I gathered recipes, and I amassed a huge library of books. And through it all, I felt completely overwhelmed, but I kept moving forward. I had my go-to websites. All day I dream about food. I breathe I'm hungry, Healthful Pursuit, and Ruled Me. And every time I visited these sites, I was excited, hopeful, and this began a new relationship with food, cooking, and healing. So with therapeutic ketosis, which is what I need to do for my seizures, I had to focus on macros and ratios. And I had a set of tools in the kitchen to help me. I had 2 apps. One was the Keto Diet app, and it was full of recipes. My husband found that one for me, and he texted it to me, and that was literally where I started. And then MyFitnessPal for all of my tracking. I had 2 gram scales. One lived on the kitchen counter, and one I carried in my purse. And I had measuring spoons and cups. And eventually, I got a Precision Extra and began testing my glucose and ketones. I was focused on measuring and weighing, and it brought focus, and it was a complete distraction from the worry of having a seizure. It was challenging in the beginning. I won't lie about that. I spent the first year and a half tracking and measuring everything to the point where I feel like it made me a little neurotic. It had its purpose, really, and it guided me so well. But as time went on, that scale got pushed back into the corner, and the measuring cups and spoons only came out when I made recipes. And MyFitnessPal, well, she disappeared from my phone for a while, but I did have to bring her back recently because sometimes people can lose too much weight when they're doing this, so she's not my friend, but I have her around. During the beginning, I was overwhelmed with it all, but I had a goal, and I am beyond good at planning and organizing, probably to the point that I need to go to Organizers Anonymous like my mother-in-law says. So, I had my go-to websites. I had my tools, and I made every single Sunday prep day. That first week I started out, I was so overwhelmed with planning meals. There were so many options out there of things to cook, and I didn't really know what to do. And my amazing sister stepped in one more time and said, "Pick 4 recipes, Jade, and master them." For those of you who don't know, I was not a good cook. I think I could make 3 things. So I started with that. My first 4 were caramelized onion and bacon smothered pork chops from Food Dreamer, easy delicious coleslaw and bacon cheeseburger casserole from Ruled Me, olive, basil, and almond tapenade from the Charlie Foundation, and crispy chicken drumsticks from the Keto Diet app. And my first 4 became household staples. And every 2 weeks, I would swap one out and try a new one. And each time I stepped into the kitchen, I felt hopeful. I prepped my food, and I felt control for the first time in my life. I was empowering myself with the research I had. I was giving my life focus. And with focus came hope that things could be better. With the food, I began to heal, and those feelings of anger I battled, they just slipped away. But I knew I was missing something, and it was community, connection, and a way to make me feel less isolated and alone. So I reached out, and I created an Instagram account. And I hoped I could find someone doing keto like me. My whole life, a part of me had always been searching for someone like me, someone that had epilepsy, someone that understood the struggles. And I met Jillian. And for the first time, I found someone who understood, because they were living it too. We talked every month on Sundays about life, epilepsy, keto, and she taught me so many things, and she helped ease a lot of my worries. But what she gave me was the greatest friendship I'd searched my whole life for. She understood because she was living it too. She understood the struggles. But like me, she believed in the importance of self-empowerment. I had no idea creating that account would help me connect, and it would lead to so much more. My community grew on and off social media. I connected locally, nationally, and another piece of the puzzle was put into place. And those feelings of being alone, they were quieter, and things began to change. I can't tell you when it changed, but it was as if someone reached inside me and took out the sadness, anger, and simply replaced it with happiness. And time in the kitchen was healing me. Life with the diagnosis of epilepsy was getting easier and easier. It was more than seizure control. My life was full of more smiles and laughs, and emotionally, things were easier. And when things were difficult, I headed into the kitchen because it brought me joy and happiness. But things change. It wasn't always butterflies and roses. Life just had different struggles. A year after my husband and I went out to barbecue. It was for his birthday, and we ordered our food, and he stepped out to take a call. And I waited, and he didn't come back, but the food came. So I began to eat, and I pulled an avocado out of my purse like I had done a billion times before, and I sliced it in half, and I set the other half on the table. And next thing I knew, the waitress was standing over me and telling me I needed to get up and leave or put that avocado away. I sat there stunned, and then I could hear an old voice, and a black cloud came across my face, and I probably looked like I wanted to punch her. And then I heard, "I just want to be normal," ringing in my ears. And at that moment, I didn't know how to defend myself. I wasn't prepared for it. And Eric returned and asked what was wrong. I told him, and he called the waitress over. And he asked for the check, and he explained why I was eating the avocado. I was angry at myself, and I vowed that it would never happen again. Epilepsy was becoming something I worried less and less about, but I still felt weird and not normal. And sometimes those situations, like that barbecue joint, brought up that old anger in me. But thanks to keto and the peace, control, and emotional balance it gave me, it allowed me to process and deal with that situation. I was able to figure it out, and I was on my way. I needed to forget normal and just be me. I approached all these new struggles. I had a go bag, which is a plastic bag full of all the food, and I still pull them out at restaurants. I had a doctor's note. I called my doctor immediately after that barbecue situation, requested a note, and I have carried it in my purse for the last almost 2 years, and it's very beat up, but I've never had to pull it out. But I'm prepared with it, so I don't have to deal with that again. I still carry bacon and avocado in my purse, and I've stopped being embarrassed about it. I'm proud. I am prepared. I was never going to be normal. What the heck was that anyway? This is my new normal. And I was finally accepting it. I was no longer allowing feelings of embarrassment, burden, anger, or powerlessness to control me. I was coming into myself and opening up and connecting with the world in a whole new way. The ketogenic diet had become a healing journey in the kitchen that expressed my creativity and individuality. It helped me become more confident, grounded, and with that came the ability to share my story and experiences with others. This is a process and a journey, and I was enjoying that new path. I was finding peace. My feelings had less control. I was finding my emotions were easier to handle. And the roller coaster of my life, well, it still had ups and downs, but I could manage it now. And eventually, what began as a purpose to heal myself grew into a passion to help others, and a whole new world opened up. What began in the kitchen was going beyond. I felt empowered, and that lack of control was a thing of the past. And in its place was an acceptance of my life and the role my diagnosis played in it. I was truly proud of my diagnosis, no longer embarrassed, and I wanted to scream it from the rooftops. I was made into a warrior by my diagnosis, but I made the choice to be empowered by it. And I gained limitless hope, which I took into the rest of my life. I had embraced my diagnosis and began using it to help others. I was no longer that little girl in the beginning, but a woman who found acceptance with her diagnosis and found a lifestyle that helped me become the happy, empowered, energetic, and hopeful person standing before you now. But, as anyone knows me will tell you, that isn't enough. I literally want to change the world by helping people find their own personal journey of healing, no matter what it is. It is my hope, after hearing me speak today, you have a better picture of what life with epilepsy can be like. How it is for a lot of people who haven't found their voice. And as I have said before, I want to help people avoid the struggles, find hope, and believe that there is a solution out there for them. If you feel inspired, share my story on social media, tell a friend, or visit my website and learn more. Together, we can change the world and show others that there is a life beyond a diagnosis with a little hope, empowerment, and education. I want to thank you all so much for being here. And as a thank you for getting up early, text Keto to that number and get a copy of my ebook. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram, or check out my website. Thank you. This means the world to me.
If there are any questions, please step up to the mic. Make sure you speak closely to the mic.
Of course.
Baby, I just want to say normal is overrated, and I love you. And thank you so much for that awe-inspiring talk. It was awesome. Thank you, Jade.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, I have a son. He's 58. He's had epilepsy since he was 9.
Yep.
He's a grand mal.
Okay.
And I think his problem now is making him listen to me or all this information that I'm going to try to send him again, because he's 59 years old. And
Right.
And one thing, are you completely off medication now?
Great question. So I'm currently titrating off medication. I am still on Garbatrol, and I'm on a very low dose of Vimpat. I just titrated down 2 months ago. I'll titrate down again in August. So the goal is to come off it completely, and it's going really well.
Right. His fear, I think his doctor has tried to get him to take some of the latest medications, but he's afraid to because what he's taken now is working.
Yes.
So I don't know how to handle that
So
either.
that's a tricky thing. It's really a personal choice. I know my doctor kind of fights with me sometimes. He is like, you're controlled, you're good. Why would we want to change anything? I think you have to come to your own decision. I talk to people about you have to kind of hit your own personal rock bottom. And mine was sitting in a dark room, not wanting to breathe and live. So everybody finds it, but you can't force someone, Right. I mean, medication is a choice. It's just another path to finding your way. So I always say, share the information, but you can't force people to do it. It's like you can take a horse to water, right? But you can't make them drink.
Right.
It's the same theory.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just, tell them to follow me on Instagram.
Okay. Yeah. And just keep praying, right?
Just keep praying. I mean, and the biggest thing is being supportive. That's what anybody with any diagnosis, it doesn't matter if it's epilepsy or something else, just knowing someone's there and supporting you in your choices is one of the greatest things. Right. I know I'm beyond blessed with the people in my life because no one has ever said, don't do that, Jade. So you just have to support them and share.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Hello.
Hi. I just want to say thank you. I don't think I can actually speak,
Would you like a hug?
but thank you very much for this. I think all the money I spent was worth it.
So,
Yes. Ross.
no, how effective has the ketogenic diet then been in controlling your seizures compared to the medication, either with number of seizures or side effects?
Okay.
All the bad side effects from keto.
All right. Yeah. The side effects have actually been less now that because I'm still on medication, as you guys have heard. So the side effects are less, but titrating off, I believe, has been easier because to me, it's that I have keto. It's my buffer. It's got my back when I come down off the meds, so it's going to be okay. But I've noticed, so I do occasionally still have auras. I won't lie about that. But they're so minimal now, and they're usually when I sleep. That never used to be the case. I used to have them whenever I ovulated for the whole entire week, and it was nonstop. I couldn't sometimes go to work and stuff like that. So all of those have changed, and that to me is a world of difference. And my mother says I'm a whole new person, and I'm happy. And that's honestly the best part, because I was miserable. So I hope that answered your question, Ross. Hi, Mama.
You have always been my first teacher, my hero, and I am so proud of you, Jade. Look at you up there. my big baby girl. And she is amazing. You cannot believe how sick she was for many years. Struggle, struggle, struggle. She'd never be able to describe it or tell it, but we lived it. And she is a different person. Absolutely no doubt about that. Happy, fulfilled, loving girl. God bless you, baby.
Thanks, Mom. She calls me her little warrior, even though I'm 38 years old. She says I live in the flow now. Hi.
Hi. Just a work question.
It's you, Nicole.
Yeah.
God,
yeah.
you guys. All right, I'm listening.
But I have an actual question.
Okay, good.
So, as an employer, what suggestions might you have for folks that might be unfamiliar with this type of disability? Because to me, it's it's not as commonplace, if you will, as other disabilities or frequently occurring. What do you got?
It's actually more frequent. We just like to hide in the dark.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Because of the stigma with it. But you know what the best thing is, and I think this is an amazing question, and thank you so much for asking. You can contact the Epilepsy Foundation. They send people out to go over safety training for epilepsy, because that's the thing, is most people don't even know what to do when someone has epilepsy. They will still stick something in someone's mouth, and if you do that, you're going to lose your finger. So that is one of the big things. You could have a whole training. The Epilepsy Foundation, wherever you live, you contact them, say, I want to have a epilepsy training for my employees. And
awesome.
You'll get to learn how to do that if someone was to have a seizure. So, and then...
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and in doing that, you may very well open up the door for people who actually have it that you don't even know about. It's like by doing that, you could be breaking the stigma and opening up and making it so other people feel comfortable.
Awesome. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Well, if you're afraid to come up to the mic, you can find me later on. I know how that can be intimidating for people.
Jade Nelson, ladies and gentlemen.